Hello and welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to welcome you into this session. Welcome back. For those of you who've been with us before in this series of Alef Trust dialogues, and these dialogues that are happening now once every couple of weeks are really very much about exploring the corona pandemic and the challenges it is bringing for all of us at this time, or for very many of us around the world. My name is Jessica Bockler, and I'm one of the co-founding directors of the Alef Trust. And together with my fellow director, Professor Les Lancaster, we're welcoming our colleague, Dr. Steven Schmitz, today to explore the value of the shamanic paradigm in helping us make sense of the coronavirus and its impact. And really also to unpack today, to explore together how a shamanic paradigm and how rituals may enable us to cope with the suffering and the uncertainties that we may be encountering in our lives right now, and how we might be able to bring change, how we might be able to transform our human presence here on Earth, coming into better relationships really on so many levels with ourselves, with other people, and with nature, with Earth. So just a little about Steven before we kick off with the dialogue today. Steven received his PhD from the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology in the United States, and he's been involved in the transpersonal field since the mid-1970s. And Steven was initiated both into shamanism and also Zazen in 1974. He's a past president of the Association for Transpersonal Psychology and also a former board member of the European Transpersonal Psychology Association, Eurotas. And Steven now teaches shamanism and rituals worldwide. He offers shamanic healing workshops as well as ceremonies. And he also has a private practice of shamanic counseling, shamanic healing, and spiritual mentoring. And he's also a member of the faculty at Alef Trust. So a big welcome to you, Steven. It's good to have you here with us.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you all for showing up. Thank you, Les and Jessica and Nick and Francesca, for all your help in setting this up and making it happen. And I appreciate all the people who have taken the time to join and hear this talk. I'm very excited to be here today and to share what I know with all of you. As Jessica mentioned, there is a lot of troubling times right now, and there are certain ways that shamanic practice, shamanic paradigms, shamanic rituals can help to bring about a change and transform the energy of your lives to make them be in a more balanced and harmonious and healthy way. I want to make sure that you know that I'm not going to romanticize shamanic practice in any way to say that if you just start practicing shamanism, the virus will, magically go away. If you catch it, it'll make it go away in you. What I am saying is that there is both value in modern science and modern medical systems. There are certain things that they can be very beneficial to us, and there are also very many beneficial aspects of the ancient spiritual practices that do exist. There are many different spiritual practices. The one I know the best is, or the two, is Zen and shamanism. And today I'm here to tell you about some of the shamanic practices that can be used to help bring back more harmony, to bring back more balance, to bring back more health into your life, to be able to supplement and add to the healing prospects of what the medical system has to offer. If you do get the virus or you think you might have it, of course, go take a test with the medical system. And if you do have it, let them use what they know from what they've studied and how they've been treating people to work with the virus. And I'm also advocating that you also work with not only the physical part of it, but the spiritual part of it, to work with nourishing your soul, nurturing your soul. And shamanism is a very ancient spiritual practice. It's one of the oldest ones that we know of. We have records that say it goes back at least 60,000 years. And it's a very powerful practice. It is still being practiced today in 2021 for one very simple reason: it works. And I've seen that work. I've been practicing since 1974 when I was first initiated, and I've seen many instances of healing, of empowerment, of help in bringing balance and harmony into people's lives, and a lot of healing miracles that I've seen happen. And I say miracle because there were things that weren't helped by other means, and they can't be necessarily explained by rational means. So I do want to share today, what I will share is some of the aspects of shamanism that can be helpful for people during these very troubling times, these times of the coronavirus pandemic, the economic uncertainty, the social unrest. There's many different aspects right now of living that are causing stress, that are causing people to feel fear, to feel angry, to feel confused. And so I want to offer some of these things that we can do on a daily basis in your everyday life. You don't have to be a shaman to do any of these. You just have to be open to the idea that spirits do exist, which is one of the basic tenets of shamanism, that spirits are real. Now, not real like this pen that I'm holding in my hand, but they are real on a certain level. Shamans know that there is both a physical material world as well as a invisible spiritual world. And they have developed the methodology to travel between the two worlds, to step into the spiritual world and to connect with helping entities that can provide healing, can provide power, can provide guidance, can provide help in our everyday lives. The main practice, now I'm not going to go into a lot of discussion about shamanism because I think most of you are well aware of the basics of shamanism. I want to focus more on the very concrete practical practices that we can do to facilitate being able to deal with the stress, deal with the fear, deal with the confusion that is happening currently with
Steven,
all the situations.
Steven,
Yes.
can you hear me? It's Les here.
Yeah.
I don't want to cramp your style. I don't want to stop your flow too much because it's all very interesting. And I agree that it would be great to look at the concrete steps. Then I'm going to take you back because I'm keen that there be an element of dialogue here if we can manage that. And so let me take you back to the title. Yeah, the title, Benefits of Shamanic Paradigm and Rituals During Crisis, and the kind of crisis we're in now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to start just with that phrase, shamanic paradigm. In many ways, you touched on that already, like
Yes.
we were talking about the two worlds. So, but
actually,
just to push you a little bit on that.
Okay.
So what is a shamanic paradigm? And because we're kind of working with psychology a lot here, so let me put an edge to the question. What is a shamanic paradigm and how can you relate that to psychology?
That's a very good question. Most of the time, I don't really do a lot of relating of shamanism to psychology. Basically because it's a spiritual practice, and for me, what's important is what works. And with the clients that I have, what I've found is that most times if we have with clients that have a deep understanding of what they think shamanism is, it really does interfere with their ability to use the practices. Because shamanism is not something you think about. It's not a kind of a theory or a doctrine. It's a practice. And it's a way of surrendering from our everyday rational, logical thinking mind and taking a break and opening up to a more spiritual dimension. So that's an interesting question for you to ask me at this point, because my whole preparation is on allowing for people to take away some kind of a practice of what they can actually do. As you know, shamanism is a very earth-based, very practical tradition. It's not about transcending. It's not about becoming enlightened. It's not about, a lot of the different benefits of other spiritual practices. It's a way of realizing that this world is a dream and that we are creating this dream. Not to say it's totally illusionary or it's false. I'm just saying that this is a dream that we dream, it's a daydream that we are creating. And we create that dream, and we have the ability to create the dream that we would like, that's beneficial for us. As we all know, from a psychological standpoint, we all have narratives in our head. Kendra spoke on that on the last talk very eloquently. And those narratives that we have accumulated, that we have going on in our head, very much affect our emotions, our behaviors, our thoughts, and how we show up in the world. And shamanism is a practice, a way of working with that knows that we can shift that those things, as Jessica said at the beginning, that we can bring about a change. We can bring about transformation. It's not just a nice transpersonal theory about transformation. It's an actual practice of very practical, concrete transforming of aspects of our lives that are causing trouble, causing depression, causing sadness, causing grief, causing anger and violence, in a way of where we don't feel powerless against these aspects of ourselves. So many people right now, especially with this pandemic, feel very powerless, right? There's nothing I can do. There's no vaccine for it. There's no real, nobody really knows truly what's happening. So it causes a lot of confusion, a lot of fear, a lot of anger, which can result, as you know, in violence. And that sense of helplessness can be shifted through shamanic practice, meaning that if you have a way to work with the things that are causing you to feel helpless, you can realize there are things you can do in your everyday life, that you don't have to keep thinking that these thoughts, these negative thoughts, that I cannot do anything about it, because there are many things you can do.
Yeah, we agree. I mean, this is all psychology,
Okay.
So the question is, I mean, you're talking about the narrative and the emotions, and we're talking about stepping outside of one's habitual narrative, and you're right. I mean, I'm sure, Stephen, we agree on so much, so it's a constructive dialogue. It's not trying to pick anything apart.
Yes.
But I mean, psychology has a lot to say about the ways in which we enter a different kind of state of consciousness, and how from that state we can, not so easy to change necessarily, but at least get a different perspective on the narratives. And so I hear you talking about a paradigm which I think is profoundly psychological. So so that was the challenge in the first question. And I mean, it's not a, how can I put this? It's not a naive or sort of vacuous challenge, I think, you said it yourself earlier, we have many ancient practices, and there are lots of practices that we wouldn't want. I mean, child sacrifice, animal sacrifice, all kinds of things that went on in the name of kind of going somewhere else other than this world, or placating the gods, or whatever it might be.
Exactly.
So there's not
and that's
a
why
kind
I'd
of
say it's important to be able to deal with the modern knowledge.
well, it's
and
important. You said it. Yeah.
to blend the two.
So
Yeah.
we should take advantage of medical progress and so on. But I'm not talking about that directly. I'm talking about kind of worldview. Because I
Okay.
think a paradigm, in this case shamanic paradigm, but a paradigm is fundamentally about a worldview. And
Definitely.
yeah,
Yes.
and so that, the point of interest, I think, as well as all the practices, and as you said before, the concrete steps, which we will come to. I'm not going to, try to
Good.
bypass
Okay.
that. But the point of a worldview is to recognize, where we integrate. Because we're not going back. We're not going back to child sacrifice. We're not going back to animal. All those things, right? And so
I would hope not.
So we're confronting a narrative at all kinds of levels. Our individual narrative, and a government's narrative, a global narrative. That's what this pandemic is about in many ways. And so that's where I'm kind of challenging you to say, how does a shamanic paradigm, how do you situate it in relation to these different levels of narrative that are so strong and strident for us at the moment?
Okay. Well, basically, how I present it, or how where I place it, is similar to what I do with my class that I teach for Alef Trust, as well as my practice, that I don't spend a lot of time on talking about the perspective. I give people a basic overview of the fact that spirits do exist, that our rational, logical, type of consciousness is but one of many, as William James stated. And I kind of create the possibility for an opening to see that their way of thinking, their narrative that they're holding on to, which may or may not be beneficial at all for them, is something that can change. It's a limited aspect of it. There's so much more that they can expand their consciousness to see other ways of looking at the world, other ways of looking at themselves, knowing things about their soul. If they have lost soul parts that would require a soul retrieval. If they don't know anything about that, there's no way they can actually then take the steps to restore those soul parts. So typically what I've found is when I try to explain too much about the perspective or the theoretical side of it, it really blocks the experience. And for me, what I found is, in order to have a true understanding of shamanism, you don't want to just take a class. You don't want to just read a book. You want to actually experience it, which is why, which is how I focus on most of my practice, is to give the person an experience of a shamanic practice. With the workshops, I often, as I think I may have mentioned to you, I've often will start by saying, this workshop won't make you shaman, because it's much more involved than just taking a weekend workshop. And I said, I don't want you to believe anything I say. Of course, I get a lot of puzzled looks, and I tell people, I don't want you to just listen to what I have to say. I don't want you listen to the description. And some of it will sound very, unfamiliar, very unknown to you, very strange. But what's important is the actual experience. Once you experience connecting with a spirit entity, you don't have to believe that spirits exist. You have experienced it. And so,
you've experienced something. People have many diverse experiences.
Yes, they do.
You're already putting it into a framework, and that's fair enough. It's the framework I'm asking you about.
Oh,
I
okay.
think I know that you want to talk about the concrete steps, and we haven't got a lot of time. So
Yeah.
maybe, yeah, you move on to talk about these concrete steps that you're interested in. Yeah.
Before you do, Stephen, I'm just going to
Yes.
hop in there. I want to give our participants a voice. So if you haven't yet already, can I invite you all to open the chat window and let us know where you're calling in from today, and also what experiences have you got with shamanism, shamanistic practices? Share a little something. What does shamanism mean to you? And if there are questions you want to raise, please bring them in, comments and so on. So we would really like to hear your voices and have your comments. Stephen, back to you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that, Jessica, because I really would like this to be a dialogue and not just me speaking. I really do feel that most understanding, or a lot of understanding, also happens by asking questions that I may not have, things that I may not have thought about, have brought up, because I know so much about this that there may be some simple things that people have. So yes, I will support what you just said, and please bring any questions you may have. I guess it's just to say a little bit about what you're saying, Les, is that there is a framework that we work from in shamanic practice. And the framework has to do with some of the basic tenets. One is the web of life. And the web of life says that we are all interconnected, that we are not separate. And so just in that kind of a bit of a narrative, it changes this whole idea, especially, calling it social distancing. I call it physical distancing, because we don't have to distance socially, because, like with this thing here, we're connecting around the world with people in a social way. And this is very helpful. In shamanic terms, the sense of community is very important. And we know that there's a lot of benefits in having community, about getting support, about being inspired, about getting help, feeling strong, feeling that you're not alone. I mean, there's a lot of different things that can happen from that. It also, the fact that we think in terms of we are all one, opens us up to the opportunity for diversity and to appreciate the differences, not to fight against them or be prejudiced against them, or in any way bring up violence against any kind of differences, because we are all one. And because of that web of life, just like a spider web, if you touch one part, it reverberates through the whole thing. And it's the same thing with us. As we act and as we think and as we feel, there's an energetic component to that. Energy is a really important part of shamanic paradigm, that there is an energy that when I say, if I'm really angry at you and I yell rage, I'm not just saying words. I'm throwing very divisive, violent energy at you that will have an impact on you on many different levels. And that's another thing about being open to not only the spirit realm, the fact that spirits do exist, and that's obviously very controversial in itself, but also the fact of energy, and that when we are violent, when we are what I call indulging in the rage of anger. Now, it's okay to feel angry at someone and to communicate it. What's not so okay is to communicate or to throw the rage energy on someone else, because what you're doing is adversely harming and affecting that other person. You're having an impact that they may have no idea about, and they don't know how to work with that, but they'll carry that with them. So it's really important to have practices to be able to work with, to not only recognize those energies, to accept them, but then how to transform them. How do we transmute that negative energy that does not need to be put out into the world? There's enough of it out there. And how do we transmute that into more, let's say, light and love, so that we're putting out energy that is no longer harmful. We're putting out energy that is helpful and healthy. Does that give a little bit better framework?
No, that's great. And that point about the web of life, I think, is a very, very potent image, you know, and to think in terms of the pandemic, and we talked about this before, I think, you and I, you know, that many people, you don't have to be shamanic necessarily, I think many people would see what's happening in terms of not just the virus, but the way that societies are responding to the virus. Many people would see those in relation to what we're doing to our environment, the sense of values that we have, what's going on in our societies. Yeah, it's a huge shake-up. I think that's what's going on in terms of the web of life. So yeah, we agree, I'm sure. What I want to do, and I'm sure again we'll come back and there'll be time to look at these practical steps. I think so. I think we'll take a pause, because what we're doing with these hours, as well as the talking, is also time for a more contemplative or a more practical orientation. So I'm going to pass back to Jessica, who might want to take us, or maybe Steven, this is something you could take us through. Maybe there's something we said about the practical steps. So maybe this is a time, we're kind of halfway through, it's a good time. Maybe you want to bring us into
actual exercises?
Yes, I think that would be good.
Okay.
Something that will help us land a little in the experience, and also then I'd love to pick up again on what's being posted in the chat window. I'd like to encourage further engagement there, and then we'll come back to that after we've had a moment to kind of let this land in the body, let this land in the whole of ourselves. I think that'd be great. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, well, I have 3 that I'll do. They're fairly short. And they're from 3 different teachers I've worked with. One is from a spirit teacher I work with. One is from a woman named Sandra Ingerman that some of you may have heard of, who's a very world famous shamanic teacher and just, how can I say it, just a most amazing teacher. And another one of my teachers, Angelus Arian, who unfortunately is no longer with us. So what I'd like you to do to just have a little experience, I'll take you through 3 simple little exercises, is I'd like you to stand up and then close your eyes. Yeah. And feel your feet on the floor. Relax your knees. So make sure your knees aren't locked. And I want you to put your attention on the soles of your feet. And using your imagination, open up the chakras on the soles of your feet, and with your imagination, extend roots down deep into the earth. So let these roots connect you very strongly, very solidly with the grounded energy of the earth. So take a moment to do that. Just imagine roots coming out of the chakras of the soles of your feet and connecting with the earth below you. Once you feel that connection, a strong connection with that grounded, very solid energy, on your next inhalation, I want you to gently bring that earth energy, that very grounded, solid, strong earth energy up and fill your energetic body, that body that surrounds your physical body. So just take a few moments, and on each inhale, draw up from the earth that very grounded energy to fill your energetic body. Okay, now keeping the attention on that earth energy that's in your energetic body, I also want you to put your attention on the top of your head. Using your imagination, open up your crown chakra. And out of your crown chakra, extend branches up and into the cosmos. So let branches go up out of your crown chakra and connect with the deep cosmos. And notice how this energy feels. Does it feel different than the earth energy that you're connecting with? Once you feel a solid, strong connection with this cosmic energy, again, on your next inhalation, draw down, very gently, draw down that cosmic energy to also enter into your energetic body and commingle with the earth energy. So gently draw down with each inhalation the cosmic energy and have that also fill your energetic body. And as you're doing that, notice, how does it feel to have the cosmic energy and earth energy commingle? Just be aware of what feelings that brings up. Okay, when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Now, this is an exercise you can do anytime, pretty much anywhere. It's what I suggest to my clients when they first come in and they're feeling kind of out of sorts or low energy or just not very good energy. I will tell them, take a few minutes to do this. And it not only gets them in the present moment, which is also helpful for counseling, it really does energize them and makes them, have a part of, be a part or present part of the process we're going through. So you can sit down at this point. The second exercise that we're going to be working with is how do we transmute, how do we transform this negative energy that we have? These energies that when we have negative emotions, there is a reason we have these negative emotions. There is a purpose behind them. And it's not helpful, as we all know from a psychological standpoint, to repress our emotions or deny them or gloss over them, because they will come out. So a way to work with them in a very healthy way is to transmute the energy behind them. So again, I'd like you to close your eyes and think about something in your life that is causing some very negative emotions, either some fear, some anger, some disgust, some grief, some sadness, something that brings up negative emotions for you. And once you have a clear idea of that in your mind's eye, let yourself fully feel that negative emotion. Feel it. Really feel the anger, feel the sadness, feel the confusion, feel the upset. And then look behind this emotion to the energy that's connected with it, and ask it to be transmuted into love and light. And when it does, then allow that to be shared with the universe rather than the negative emotion. Now, it may take you a few times to do this. You may find yourself having some resistance. You may not want to let go of it for whatever reason. That's okay. Part of the thing I found with shamanic practice is it's a practice, like any spiritual practice. You have to do it more than once. You can't do it once. And as we know from a psychological standpoint, if we have something that's deeply rooted, we're not going to just go, oh, I would like this to be changed, plang, and it's gone. It takes some work. But this is one way, this is from Sandra Ingerman, where she talks about how to transmute that energy behind the negative emotions into a very positive and healing type feeling of love and light, so that we have more of that to spread out into the world. And then the third example is very short. It's from one of my teachers, Angeles Arian, who unfortunately is no longer with us. She was saying that throughout the world there are 4 healing salves. And these healing salves are a way that we can bring about also transform the negative feelings, being upset, feeling stress, all the things that the pandemic, the economic uncertainty, the social unrest, all these things that are happening in the world can cause us to feel stressful and unhealthy. There are 4 things we can do, very simple. And she used it in form of a question to ask yourself, or you can ask your client, when is the last time, or when did you stop dancing? Dancing is like a universal healing salve, as Jessica is well aware of and has shared with us many times. The second question to ask, when did I stop singing? And we all know how much that can nourish our soul and just change a really negative feeling that we have. The third question is, when did I stop enjoying telling stories? And we heard that again, the last talk with Kendra about the importance of storytelling. And the last one was, when did we stop enjoying the sweet sounds of silence? And I think we all know how healing silence can be. So whenever you're feeling a little upset, here are 4 very simple practices that shamans use, have used, people have used all over the world to dance, to sing, to tell stories, and to enjoy silence. So these are 3 things that you can do on your own. You don't have to be a shaman. You don't have to go through any kind of special training. These are 3 things you can do to utilize shamanic paradigm and practice into making your lives more healthy, more balanced, more harmonious.
Thank you, Steven.
You're welcome.
And I'd like to make audible the contributions that have been placed in the chat window. And some of you have said hello and have said that you're new to shamanism. Shamanism is not something that you're familiar with, so you're listening keenly. And some of you know of Steven's work. Sue was posting, Sue Bradley, in the chat window saying she had worked with Steven in our master's program. And the experience of the journeys there felt very much maybe like a dream, not like an imagining, she writes. And in the 3 journeys that she did with you, she saw the same landscape, she says, met the same spirit animal, a bear, and received answers to questions that she posed at the time. That was Sue writing in the chat window. And then we had a contribution from Cheryl, exploring sharing with us what kind of shamanic rituals she has undertaken in relation to 5 rhythms dancing, which is quite a shamanic practice, isn't it? Yes.
Very powerful.
And also shamanic drumming workshops she's attended. And
Yes.
One thing she's very interested in is doing a vision quest. I'll pause there for a moment. Maybe you want to say something about vision questing, explaining what that is for those who don't know.
Okay, very basically, Vision Quest is a practice that was mainly used in Northern and Southern America for the young teenage boy as a rite of passage, that an elder would take him out into the wilderness. They would create a sacred circle, and he would sit there for typically 3 to 4 days, and without eating, without drinking, and spend the whole time crying or asking for a vision. And he would just be out in the wilderness by himself in total isolation, doing nothing except trying to connect with spirit, trying to connect with the sacred in order to have a vision. When the time was up, the elder would bring him back to the the council, the tribe council of elders, and he would describe his vision. And that vision would determine basically his role for the tribe. You know, whether he might, if he had a great vision, he may be on his way to becoming a chief, he might be a warrior, might be a horse trainer, whatever. And for me, the first one I did was very transformative because during my first vision quest, Spirit actually took me on a shamanic journey. Somehow, Spirit made my heartbeat audible. It's never happened before. It never happened since. I could actually hear, like you can hear that, my heartbeat. And I shifted my consciousness and went somewhere and connected with these power animals. And I had no idea what shamanism was at the time. I had no idea what a shamanic journey was. But when I came back, I was told I was taken on a journey. And so that experience that was so powerful completely transformed my life. And it gave me a very specific focus of how I was going to do counseling and how I would do my career. And, you know, it's been, 46 years or something, and I'm still practicing. Mm-hmm. So a vision quest can be a very, very powerful rite of passage. So I highly recommend it. You know, make sure you have a very good teacher or a very good person to organize it. All of mine were done on my own. I don't necessarily recommend that. I was young and very brave and very confident, very trusting in Spirit. And I was very safe in what I did. It's very important when you're doing this work to do it in a very sacred and a very safe manner. Even the simple little exercise we do, the thing that makes it sacred is the intention, is the connecting with Spirit, connecting with the energetic flow, and allowing the sacred to come into our everyday life. You know, to me, spiritual practice is about bringing the sacred into your everyday life. It's not something I do for 1 hour on a zafu or for an hour in a church building or something like that. It's how I live my whole life. And if there's time, I will give people 3 little rituals they can do to start their morning. But yeah, good question.
I was going to say there, you know, the big temptation for us is almost a kind of form of spiritual tourism. We pay money, we go somewhere in order to experience these practices. And I mean, not to knock that, but also to recognize that many people can't afford to do that, don't have the money right now, we can't travel. So is there something that we can do safely, you know, a DIY vision quest? What would it include, you know, and how would we stay safe? I mean, many people have told us about going out into nature at this time. It's very grounding, it's very nurturing during this crazy time of lockdown and being socially or physically distanced from others. I wonder if you could unpack that a little bit for us.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Because it's basically the intention that's what's so important here, not how it looks. And the fact that, you know, Spirit exists everywhere. It's easier for us to connect with Spirit out in nature because it's very natural. There's not a lot of distractions. You don't have a lot of noise. You don't have a lot of people. There's not a lot of distractive energy or as much in the wilderness as there is in the middle of the city. For you to try and meditate in downtown San Francisco on the street corner would be very difficult. Now, if you go off into like Desolation Wilderness up by Lake Tahoe in California and you go off to a lake that you're the only one there, it's very easy to be contemplative and meditate. So with that in mind, you can do this in your own home. If you can create a space where no one will disturb you for, let's say, a day, 3 days is best. But if you can possibly do it where you're not going to be disturbed for 3 days, or you can go somewhere that you trust that's safe, that you won't be disturbed for 3 days, and you spend that time. I recommend most modern people to take water. We can fast without food 3 days. That's no big deal. Without water, we're not used to that, and we're not prepared for it. So I recommend you have some water. But you go and you only have a journal and a pen. You don't go to read. You don't go to watch TV. You don't take your phone. You turn the, have no phone available, and you spend those whatever time you feel that is necessary to be alone and ask for a vision, and be open to how that might look. It's not necessarily going to be something that's rational or logical. On one vision quest, I had a blue hummingbird show up every morning as I woke up. And there are no blue hummingbirds as far as I know. But this blue hummingbird came, and hummingbirds kind of like, they're really fast with their wings, and they kind of hover, and then they kind of jump, and they do this kind of jerky motion. This one was dancing. I've never seen a hummingbird dance. Every morning of those 3 days of the vision quest, a blue hummingbird showed up. The day before, the 2 days, or the day before it didn't show up, and the day after it didn't show up. But those 3 days of the vision quest, when I was out in the wilderness, this blue hummingbird up in the Sierra Nevadas, up about 10,000 feet, which I'm not sure hummingbirds would live up there, showed up. So that's what I'm saying. Be open to whatever comes to you in a form of a vision, and then write it down and be with that. And so yes, you could do that in your own home if you have that opportunity. You could do it in a rented room somewhere where you have nobody disturbing you. Turn off the phone. But the main thing is to be by yourself and not distract yourself with anything, and be open to asking Spirit for a vision.
Steven,
yes.
That's thanks for that, and those kind of experiences are so powerful, so powerful. Extremely. I want to draw your attention, because I think it relates very nicely. Draw your attention to the chat window. Audrey has written the last one there.
Okay.
Don't have to read the whole of it, but towards the end, she says, "I am interested in the potential integration of shamanistic concepts in modern day life, spiritually, personally, and socially."
Okay.
I wonder if you'd like to comment on that.
I would love to. Thank you, Audrey. And thank you, Les. Yes, one of the things that I feel is important, as I said, is to bring this into our everyday personal life and our professional life and our social life. And a few things that we can do. One is, I have 3 rituals I do every morning. One is, when I first get up and I take a shower, I call upon the spirit of water. There is a spirit in water, and ask the spirit of water to cleanse any kind of negativity away from me and down the drain. Very simple little ritual. Again, you don't have to be a shaman. It's the intention that you're calling upon Spirit to facilitate a cleansing, which is helpful. And let that negativity and let go of it. That's your part. Spirit's part is to help it go away. Your part is to let go. So you let it go down the drain. The second thing I do is I come down my living room and I have a large kettle drum. And as somebody mentioned, drumming circles are a great way to do rituals in community. And I do some drumming. And the drumming is there are studies done on how healthy and beneficial drumming can be for the human body, the human mind, the human soul, the human heart. And it's a way that also makes me very present in the moment and bring some joy. I know my wife really enjoys it, and I really enjoy having that sound permeate the house. And then the third thing I do is I go out in the back. I'm fortunate to have a sanctuary that I've created with a medicine wheel, and I do what I call a shamanic morning prayer. And in that morning prayer, I start off my day by giving thanks, by being grateful for all the spirits. And I call upon the spirits to guide and protect me through the day. So every morning I have protection, I have guidance, I have the opportunity to express gratitude. And it's a great way to set the tone for your day. As you know, how you start your day sets the tone for the rest of the day. So those are three things that I do kind of personally. The other thing you can do is very simple, create an altar. It could be in your bedroom, it could be in your living room, it could be any room. It could even, if you have an office, you're a counselor, you can create a little altar. And it can be anything from just a small patch of cloth with a crystal on it to, statues of Shiva, to, Buddha statues, many crystals, flowers, candles. And again, this is something that everyone, and most of you, I think, are already doing that. You can create an altar, and the altar becomes a reminder of those spiritual aspects that you're wanting to connect with. Because sometimes, I know nobody here, but sometimes people get really caught up in their fast-paced, very busy lives, and they forget about their soul. They forget to take care of that aspect of themselves, and they forget to connect in a sacred way. So there are many ways that you can do that. And also, a very simple thing you can do, let's say you're relating to somebody, and you're aware of what the person's saying is really making you angry, and you're getting really pissed off, and you're about to tell this person to go do some things that may not be very pleasant to recall later. What is important is to be aware of that energy that's generated by that emotion, as I mentioned earlier. That energy that's coming up in you and that you feel uncomfortable with, and typically what happens is you then dump it on the other person thinking they deserve it. They don't. And it also won't help your relationship. What I suggest when you feel that is to really be aware of that energy and transmute it. What you can do is ground it. Take that energy and ground it to the earth so that you can continue communicating, not arguing, not fighting, not getting violent, but actually being able to be clear of what the message is you want to share and communicate that clearly. So does that help, Audrey? I mean, that's just a few things. I could go on, but
I'll jump back in there, Steven, and Audrey might want to come in, but I also want to open this up in relation to the wider community. So
yes.
Elaine asked the question earlier, and one of the things that might be on people's minds is, yes, I can do these practices for myself, and that's really great and wonderful. And then I come into a situation or a circumstance where I'm seeing conflict, I'm maybe even involved in it, maybe in the relationship, maybe in the wider community. There's hostility or there's division. I see it on Facebook, or I see it in other circumstances, other settings. And how can I draw on these principles and, perhaps apply healing, bring healing to a community of people? If you could expand on that, that would be wonderful.
Okay. Yeah. The main thing is, again, our own thoughts. That if I'm thinking, oh, I have to go to this meeting this afternoon, and Laura is such a pain in the butt, and John is always argumentative, and you have already set up a not very beneficial meeting to happen, because you will walk in or come to the Zoom link with that energy, and people will pick that up. Even though you don't say it or express it, If I'm telling you, Jessica, I'm not really angry at what you just did. I mean, I'm exaggerating, of course. You pick it up energetically. And that's the thing that's really important about shamanism is that we do react and express and share energy between all of us. And just like when it's someone you haven't seen for a long time and they come to your front door, you don't go, oh, what are you doing here? It's like, ah, Mary, it's so good to see you. What are you doing? You're transferring very positive, very joyful, very exciting energy to this person. And how does the person react? Usually in a similar way. It's contagious. The same thing happens on a maybe a slightly not so obvious level when we go, when we think of people, when we interact with people in our relationships, that energy that we bring has an effect, either positive or negative, either healthy or detrimental. And so it's important to be aware of that and be willing to let go.
Steven?
I often talk, yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think we're
Okay.
coming towards the end. I just want to say that's great. And I kind of think of that as the way of the saint, to always bring the positive, to transmute towards love and so on. I'm also thinking there are various politicians, one of which is in your country, but I'm not going to mention any names. I can't remember the name.
I'm kidding.
And I have some pretty negative emotions in those directions.
Yes.
So should I transmute them, or what about activism? What's the role of because we're talking, again, picking up on Audrey. It's the point about society. These practices are beautiful. The practices you've described, how you begin the day, these are very fine ideas and practices, not just ideas, obviously. And we share a lot on that. But sometimes you have to act.
I agree. And I'm not saying be passive and just be, shamanism isn't about just making myself feel good. It's about being able to transform yourself so that you have a clear idea of what is important for you for social activism. And then the energy you bring to that social activism is then healthy and positive. If I come to a group and we're all sitting around going, those bad people, it's like they don't like transpersonal people and we got to beat the hell out of them. That's not going to it's not going to bring about any positive change. It's not going to bring about any transformation that's beneficial or healthy. It's going to bring about more violence.
And
so if I do
Sue
these
Bradley has made a very good point to draw your attention. I think she's right there. The transmutation can be activism in itself.
Yes, and that's what I meant about the web of life. What I do within myself also affects without me. There is a connection within, without. Just as what happens in my environment without me, outside of me, affects me. You walk into a room that's full of negativity, it affects you. The same thing is that when you change what's within you and you transmute, you are changing the world. Who's it, Gandhi, that said, be the change you want to see in the world? It's not being selfish to work on yourself. It's one of the first and primary lessons I learned as a healer.
Yeah.
The first thing is not to heal the world. First thing is to heal yourself, because otherwise you're being hypocritical, for one thing, and you're also adding that negativity to the world. If every single person in the world did no social activism other than what Sue said and transmuted all the negative energy within themselves individually, there would be no need for social activism, I feel. I mean, it's very idealistic, but, I see myself as...
Nothing wrong with idealistic.
Yeah, I call myself a practical idealist. I hold on to my ideals and I do practical things like shamanism to bring them about. And it's something I do, I tell my clients, just like Sue said, if you're going to learn shamanism, also take the responsibility to work on yourself. Work on the dark side, work on the shadow aspects, work on the negativity that you are carrying around and putting out in the world.
It sounds like that's an opening to a whole new session, which would be fascinating. But we have reached the end, and maybe pass back to Jessica to wind this up for us. And thank you so much, Stephen.
Okay, and the one last thing I'd like to say is that if anyone wants to know the morning prayer, the shamanic morning prayer that I say, feel free to email me, shamanic@yahoo.com, and I will send that prayer to you. And thank you all for listening, and thank you so much, Les, for your facilitation, and Jessica for your facilitation also.
Thank you, Stephen. And right now I feel like I'm sort of perched on the earth. In front of me is a kind of hole going down a deep, dark tunnel, like Alice into Wonderland, ready to launch in. In a way, it's a shame that we're needing to close it here because I feel like there's so much more to explore. But thank you, Stephen. Yeah, thank you for everything that you shared with us today. And if we could just have our closing slide, just so we can see which sessions are coming up. We have a few more dialogues that are coming up in the coming weeks, and we very warmly invite you to come along to those. The recording for this session will of course also be made available, so if you want to keep in touch with us and you want to find out what's happening when, please just join our mailing list, and the easiest way you can do that is by visiting our website, www.aleftrust.org. You can see it on screen now. And we have 3 more sessions coming up, one with Leela Moore, where we're exploring creativity and art as a way of sense making in the current situation. Then a session with Jevon Dengeli, exploring kind of the change in perspective which can be brought about through open awareness practices and finding ways of making sense of what is happening right now through those open awareness and mindfulness practices. And then last but not least, a session with Les and myself where we're exploring myth and the deeper zeitgeist of our times, so the deeper archetypal currents that may be playing out right now. So thank you for being with us today, and do keep in touch. Send us emails, send us questions, send us your comments. That's most welcome. And I'd like to invite you now to unmute yourselves and say goodbye. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you.
You're very
Thank
welcome.
you, Les and Jessica.
Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you so much.